Jorge,
Guzboj, ¿cómo estás?
bien, gracias. ¿Qué tal?
Aquí dándole.
¿Está bien?
Antes de Shabbat es difícil. Tengo que ayudar a preparar y hacer un montón de cosas.
¿La comida?
Sí.
Mm,
¿Y tú qué tal has estado?
bien, bien. Descansando. Hoy dormí varias horas de tarde.
Qué bueno.
A Mejaye.
Yo creo que parte de la razón que Shabbat es tan importante es por eso,
Ujú.
para recuperar y recargar las baterías.
En la oficina me preguntan, "Rocón, ¿qué hacer los sábados si no podés ir al... Digo,
¿Sabes?
voy
Si
al
alguien no ha
templo.
tenido la oportunidad de
Mm,
tener eso en su vida, el
Les
Shabbat
digo,
es
les digo, de mañana voy al templo
sumamente
y de tarde
difícil,
duermo.
pero es difícil explicarle a la gente qué es lo que significa el Shabbat.
No, porque
Muy.
no lo dicen de...
No lo dicen de maldad, para
No.
nada. Lo dicen porque no lo saben, no lo conocen.
Ujú. ¿Dónde están todos? Porque hoy tenemos siquiera a las 8 también.
Todos están todavía recuperándose después de Shabbat.
No, porque hay que hacer los devones, pero no hay que hacerlo hoy. Es interesante el nuevo capítulo. Se habla de que el Cohen Gadol puede juzgar y ser juzgado.
Lo interesante es que
No tiene inmunidad,
no,
no
pero
como, no como Trump.
no, pero tampoco tiene inmunidad. Ahorita lo van a juzgar el 10.
No, ya el juez dijo que no le va a dar cárcel ni nada.
No, pero sí que lo va a juzgar.
¿Qué
Eso es
le,
lo que ellos querían desde un principio.
qué le van a dar?
Yo creo que lo que quiere decir que es culpable, pero que no tiene que ir a la cárcel, amigo. Eso es lo que creo que van a hacer. Después el Trump lo va a someter a review y lo van a tirar afuera, porque hay muchas cosas que pasaron en el caso legal por todas las opiniones que no lo
Second,
hizo bien.
Susie
Pero
is
bueno,
leaving. Susie is leaving to the airport, so I have to help her 1 second.
Ya, ya.
not. Pero sabes, es difícil, eso es lo que creo que va a pasar. Pero bueno, ay.
El país ha cambiado mucho
Uf,
desde que yo llegué.
mm, dramáticamente.
¿Usted cuándo vino acá?
Yo vine aquí ya a quedarme y a estudiar en el 63.
¿63?
Sí,
Mm.
sí. Vine chiquito, bien chiquito.
Yo vine 14 años más tarde.
Sí.
Pero igual, ya estoy como 50 años acá. 48.
Mira, yo tengo como decimos en español, tengo toda una vida aquí.
¿Mm?
Tengo toda una vida aquí.
Pero ya veo que le tira a Guatemala también.
Ahorita voy a ir a Guatemala. Me voy
No
el
me acuerdo
lunes
que usted dijo
a
el otro día.
Houston. Sí, voy Más que nada porque tengo que ir a la tumba de toda la familia. Todos están enterrados en Guatemala.
Bueno, yo tengo a mi padre en Buenos Aires y mi abuela y el hermano de mi
Y
padre.
te tengo que ser honesto. Para mí, en términos de con mi vida, dónde hubiera querido ir,
Sí,
hubiera querido ayudar a Guatemala de todo corazón. ¿Sabes por qué lo digo? Porque fue Guatemala la que salvó a mis padres.
sí, eso es verdad. ¿De dónde venían sus padres?
Mis padres venían de Checoslovaquia.
Mm,
Okay.
Pues va, Ernie.
Good vach, good vach.
well,
New parak, Kohen Gadol. Yud
I was,
Ches Amud.
Ernie, I was reading here the Kohen Gadol has no immunity, yeah?
He
He
has no,
can judge and be judged,
that's correct.
not like Trump.
That's not true. I just told you. If you look at the king, what does the king have?
The
The
king has, the king has
total immunity. Total immunity.
The king has immunity, right?
The king has total immunity. In fact, they don't let him be on the large Sanhedrin. Why? Because if he says and gives a halacha, they can't argue with him, which is terrible. It's funny, we live different. It's amazing the power that the Melech has. I never quite realized is pretty significant.
Right,
Go ahead.
right. Well,
Sorry.
the president, they wanted to make George Washington the king. He didn't want to be king. So the president doesn't really have the same powers of a king. But the Supreme Court has said that he does have, I mean, they always had immunity. They would only be impeached. They could not be tried as a president. So there's some similarities. There's no
I
question.
mean, president. I mean, to me, there's a few presidents that really need to be admired. Washington, Lincoln. Washington was an incredibly bright. The other thing I think that most Goyim don't realize is how versed those founding fathers were not in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, in our Torah.
Right.
I mean,
on the Liberty Bell, it says, cry freedom throughout the Ukratem drawer.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
Yovel he, that's that pasuk from Vayikra.
Right.
They were Hebrew files. Harvard has Urim v'Tumim. Yale had something in Hebrew. Yes, many of them knew Hebrew. They were Bible scholars. George Washington, I visited the Turo Synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island, and he came to visit Newport, and the Jewish community came out to greet him. And there's a famous letter that he wrote to the Jewish community.
It's unbelievable.
It's an unbelievable letter.
Yeah.
George Washington was very special. They were literate. He was a military person. He was a farmer. I mean, if you think about his skills, he was a real Renaissance man. They all were.
Yep. You've been to the Jefferson Memorial, his home journey?
I did not go to Monticello, no.
Okay.
That's in Virginia.
Monticello.
That's in Virginia.
Yes, on Monticello. To prove your point, there is a kever. There's somebody buried there, a Jewish woman, because a Jewish philanthropist bought Monticello to preserve it.
Mm.
His wife then got buried there.
Buried there. Interesting.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
somebody asked me recently, which was the first colony that had Jews in it?
Well, as I said, Newport, Rhode Island, they came from, it was the Sephardic community from Brazil or Portugal. So they were there very early. Also New York, because, what do you call it? The when already was New Amsterdam, there were already Jewish refugees from Recife.
What about the city
They were Sephardic.
in Georgia? What's the name? Savannah.
Yeah, but I think Ernie's right. I think that in my opinion, what I've remember studying is that the first ones were in Rhode Island. I used to daven when I was going to medical school.
And they were Sephardic, and they were Sephardic Jews.
Right.
They came from Recife, from Brazil, because that's where they originally came from.
But when I was in Baltimore, Ernie, I used to go to the shul there that was the original German shul from the late 1700s in Baltimore.
I'm sure.
I mean, first of all, it's crazy because so much of it felt like you were in a church. They had these wooden seats that just were, I mean, it was very, very from shul. But the seats, I mean, was
the shul in Newport in Rhode Island is like a shul. It's not like a church. Later on, when the German Jews came to New York in 1850,
that's what I was going to say. The German Jews, unfortunately,
then they built these magnificent things
shuls
that looked like churches.
Yeah,
Temple Emmanuel and Bethel and all that. And even in San Francisco, they had a shul like that, because those were assimilated German Jews. They were a lot of them in banking, and those were not from.
No. This was 100% from shul. This is great. Anyway, let's start.
Yeah, Newport. Newport. We went. Richie Katz, when he married off one of his children, so there was a weekend of the Aufruf or something like that, which was in New Jersey. So Susie and I decided we went for a week and we did a road trip. We went to Newport. We went to New Haven and visited Yale. I mean, we drove around New England a little bit. And Newport is fantastic. We went to those mansions, the Breakers, like the Vanderbilts owned that, and there's some like magnificent mansions in Newport, Rhode Island, where that shul is, where the first shul is. It's worth visiting. If you're ever on the East Coast, take a ride up there. By the way, across the street from Yale, there was a great kosher restaurant. It was called Rachel's or Ruth's. It was a very nice vegetarian kosher restaurant. We had a very, very nice meal there. And Yale also is beautiful to walk around. You see Hebrew on some of the buildings. Okay.
Now you would see all of that covered by the Palestinian flag.
And Jews went.
Yeah.
Jews have gone to these schools for hundreds of years. I mean, there was always a quota. It was a certain number, but Jews were educated in all these places. They were.
You know that when I got into Johns Hopkins Medical School in the beginning of the 70s, I was only like the third or fourth class that didn't have a quota.
Right. It stopped in mid-70s.
In the late 60s, it stopped.
Right. They stopped doing
it. And
that.
it was very dramatic for me because, first of all, the class had a lot of Jews in two ways. First, I was allowed to do the oath of Maimonides. So I never took the Hippocratic Oath, number one.
I did the same thing.
And number two, but for Hopkins, that was a major thing. And the second thing that was very obvious was that they couldn't get or recruit a lot of the heads of many of the departments that were Jewish, because many of those guys had been turned down to go to school at Hopkins years and years before.
Well, at UCLA, most of the department heads, many of them came from Hopkins and many came from Rochester. So there were no Jews. It was Juden Rhein.
Right.
The one department that had a few Jews was urology. That's not the reason why I chose it. But Joe Kaufman was the chairman. He was Jewish. There was Jake Rafer. He had come from Hopkins. Rick Ehrlich was a pediatric urologist. So there were a few Jews, but in the general surgery department was Ronald Tompkins and William Longmire. These are real wasps that really didn't know what Jews were all about.
Not at all.
Surgery departments, the medicine departments already had Jews. There was a guy, Neil. There were Sherm Mellenkopf was the dean of the medical, but they all came from medicine. The surgeons were all wasps.
My field, anyway, I don't want to take up all the time tonight. It's interesting. This
Well,
this is our
nephrology,
this is for our
nephrology had
dinner.
nephrology had
Nephrology
Jews.
is no. Nephrology was created by us. It's not that there was Jews. Nephrology, if you look at the people, it was Jewish.
Right. The
Kleeman,
Klein, all the I
yeah,
still have my
you
nephrology
met
textbook.
them, of
They're
course.
all Jews.
They were all Jewish. The whole idea. Do you know that we didn't figure it out how the kidney worked till 1970?
Yeah, and there was the Goldblatt kidney.
Correct. All of those models. There was a guy
Right.
by the name of Pitts. He's the
Right,
one
Pitts.
who
Yeah,
figured
but
out
David, there was a book, by David Burton Rose. I'm sure he was.
Burton Rose was
Oh,
unbelievable.
was he
He
Jewish?
of course. I went to meet
Okay.
him. I used to have him on rapid dial on my phone when I have kashas. I would say, can I talk to you about a patient? He would give me recommendations. I used to start to go back and forth to his continuing education at Harvard, and I was always, first of all, my jaw would always drop because his knowledge was encyclopedic.
I love his. That was
You know
my
who
favorite. That was my favorite. That was the book I used even into residency, and that was very clinically
Can I tell you
applicable.
something that's amazing? I'm sorry, Mario. I apologize. The
that's
thing that was
interesting.
amazing was he had such a global understanding of things. It is thanks to him, Ernie, that we ended up with Up to Date. That was his baby, Up to Date,
Wow.
which we now is ubiquitous for all of us to use it to figure out medical information, was begun and created as a consequence of Rose. He would win best professor in medicine at Harvard every year. Eventually, they said, no, you cannot be the one. We need to get some other fresh blood. His ability to take complex ideas and put it into words was unbelievable. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Yeah.
Let's learn Gemara.
I didn't know him personally because I was at UCLA, but I certainly used his book. Okay.
All right.
I just want to, George, when I was chief resident, when I was a resident, I as you can see, I like to teach. So
no, I don't get that.
Right. No, so on my urology rounds as chief resident, when I had medical students and junior residents, the thing I like to teach was nephrology, urine output, the osmotic pressure, all of that
you
stuff.
Could have been a good nephrologist,
I
Ernie.
would have been.
You would have been a great nephrologist.
Yeah.
Why do you think? Can I tell you something? Why do you think I went back to teaching?
Yeah, nephrology is a fantastic field. Fantastic.
But it's very bad. We're doing terrible. We don't recruit people anymore. The people that we're getting are not into this. It's very sad. We can talk about this for dinner.
In general, I find that the quality of just medicine in general is going down. It's just when you see the newer generations, I'm not sure why it is, but there's no question it is.
First of all, there's no Jews.
And George, think about it. We trained really in a golden era. Why do I say that? Because a few years before us, there was no CT scan, there was no MRI, there was no really very good. So they had to be very, but we trained, and then all of a sudden we were in practice in an era that was a golden era.
100%.
Imaging,
yes.
treatment.
Yep.
For 20, 30 years, that's in the period of time that I was in my full practice, it was really fantastic. It's changed. I would say
I think of it and 100%. Anyway, Mario, we'll shut up about medicine. We'll go to the Gemara.
Yud Ches. I'm sorry, Yud Ches. Kohen Gadol dan v'danin oso. A Kohen Gadol is like a regular person. He can serve as a judge, and he can be judged if he did something wrong. Now, he can serve as a judge if he knows Chosh Mishpat. That means he has to have the same qualifications as any other judge. Me'id u'me'id noso. He can serve as a witness in front of Bezdin, and people can testify against him. Choletz v'choltzin li'ishto. If the Kohen Gadol has a brother, right? The Kohen Gadol is Ruvain, and he has a brother Shimon. And the Kohen Gadol Ruvain dies, and they didn't have children. So Shimon, the Kohen Gadol's brother, can give chalitza to his wife, and mi'abminas ishto, and can do yibum to his wife. Aval hu eino mi'abim. Now, if the Kohen Gadol is Ruvain, and his brother Shimon dies without children, and Shimon has a wife, the Kohen Gadol can't do yibum because a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to live with an almana. Not only that, he cannot have relations without unless she was a basula. So since this woman was married, she's disqualified on two counts, as an almana and as a basula. Now, mace lo mace, the Kohen Gadol has a relative who dies. So the Kohen Gadol cannot be metame to anybody, as opposed to a regular Kohen. A regular Kohen can go to the funeral of the 7 close relatives: sister, brother, son, daughter, father, mother, and his wife. Those are the 7 relatives that the Torah describes that a regular Kohen can be metame, but not a Kohen Gadol. A Kohen Gadol cannot be metame to anybody. So Eina Yotze Achramita, he does not follow.
Ernie, the only person that the Kohen Gadol can be metame for is if he finds a body outside of town.
Yeah, but that's a happenstance.
It is. No, but what I'm saying is that it shows us the importance of burying anyone, especially a person who is by hapstance just out there.
That's a mace mitzvah. There's a special thing that everyone can, and even the Kohen Gadol can be metame to him. But regarding his family, the Kohen Gadol cannot be metame to any family member. Elahein nichsi v'hu nigla. So either when they're walking with the mace, they're covered and he's revealed, or hey nigla v'hu nichsa. He has to stay away from the coffin. The yotze imon, and in this manner, where they're hidden and he doesn't see them and they don't see him, he walks yotze imon at Pesach Sha'ir in Yerushalayim, because that's where the Kohen Gadol lived. The cemeteries were outside of the city. So he would be able to go with this group until the gate, couldn't go out, Div Reb Meir. Now, if you notice, Reb Meir holds that the Kohen Gadol can walk in the city as long as he's not seen with the group that's bearing the mace. Rabbi Yehuda argues and says the Kohen Gadol cannot leave the base of Mikdash. Mishum shenemer u'min hamikdash lo yitzei. Now, when a Kohen Gadol goes to be Menachem Avelim, Kishu Menachem Acherim, derech kolam oivrim b'zachar zeh, and we're talking about there was a shura, right? Like when after you bury somebody, then two lines are formed and people walk down the middle. There was a vice Kohen Gadol called the Mamuneh, and he sort of stood in an intermediary place between him and the people. When other people come to give him comfort, we are kapara for you. You should be blessed from heaven. When you came back from a funeral, there was something called Sudas Havra. They would eat a meal primarily of lentil beans. Everybody would be on the ground except he was on a bench. Now, in contradistinction to the Kohen Gadol, Hamelech loydon v'loydon inoso. He cannot serve as a judge on Sanhedrin. He cannot be judged. Lo me'id v'lo me'id noso. He cannot, if he and somebody saw a crime, he cannot serve as the aid. And nobody can serve as a witness against him. Lo choletz v'lo chotzin liishto. If the melech dies and he didn't have any children, so they don't give chlitza to his wife. Lo miyabim lishto. He doesn't do yibum to his brother's wife, and nobody is miyabim his wife. That's not covered for the melech. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda argues with the Talmud Kam. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Imratz alachloy tzaliyabim zachalato." He can do chlitza or he can do yibum. Therefore, by freeing up the wife of his brother, so she won't be naguna. However, Omrulo ain't shoymin lo. The Chachamim said to Rabbi Yehuda, no, he cannot give up his covet. It's not the personal covet of his as an individual. It's the covet for Klal Yisrael, that you have to preserve the covet of the melech. It's like the malchus, not as an individual. It's the office. Ve'einois al menuso. If you marry a melech and the melech dies, she will remain a widow forever. She can never get remarried. It's not, you cannot be mishtamesh with the wife that the melech used. It's also a lack of cover. However, Rabbi Yehuda Omer noisei melech al menusa shel melech. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Another melech can marry the widow of a melech. Shekein matzinu b'David shenasa al menusa shel Shaul. David HaMelech, after the death of Shaul, married Shaul's widow. Shenemar v'etnalachas beis adonecha v'stasher adonecha b'chekecha. So it was permitted. Okay, so the Gemara says Kohen Gadol done. The Kohen Gadol can serve as a judge. Pshita, I mean, why not? Why would we think that he would be puzzled? So Danino so itzrachalei. The chiddush is not that he could serve as a judge. The chiddush is that he can be judged. There's a chiddush there. So the Gemara says Hanami pshita. Well, that's a davar pasha too. Eloi danina lei. If we can't judge him, he would not be able to serve as a judge, because v'aksiv he's kosher shuva koshu, and v'amarish lakish kshat atzmach kshat acherim. You have to, in order to be able to serve as a judge, you have to be able to be judged. So that's not a chiddush either. So the Gemara now tells us that the whole first part of this Mishnah is really unnecessary. The chiddush of our Mishnah is the dinim of the melech. I did a kaboila misni. Since the end of the Mishnah, we had to say melech loydon v'loydon so. There we said the king does not serve as a judge and is not judged. Tananami kohen gadol dan v'danin so. That's why we started to show that the kohen gadol can serve as a judge and can be judged. That's one answer. The Gemara. V'boy sema, the Gemara gives us a different answer. That hakamash malon, that there is a chiddush, because it says kohen gadol shaharagas on nefesh b'mezid nerag. A kohen gadol murders somebody, and he knows he was given warning, and he knows that he's not allowed to do so. So a kohen gadol who murders is put to death. Now b'shogeg gola. If he kills somebody b'shogeg, he goes into golus. He has to run to an Ari Miklat like all other murderers who kill b'shogeg. The oiver al asay v'aloy tasay. He's over on an asay and aloy tasay. The Gemara will explain what that is. V'areu keheted l'chol dvarav. He's treated like a regular Yisrael. Now, the Gemara now analyzes this baraisa. B'mezid nerag pshita. I mean, why would we think that if a kohen gadol murders somebody, b'mezid, that he wouldn't be killed? I mean, it's a davar pashut. So the Gemara agrees. B'shoige goyle itzrachalei. The chiddush is not killing b'mezid. The chiddush is that if he killed b'shoigeg, he goes into golus. So the Gemara says, "Hanami pshita." Why? What is that? Why would that be surprising to us? So the Gemara says it is surprising. It's true, because salkatay techamin hoiluk siv. There's a special din of a murderer who murdered B'shogeg, who runs to an Arei Miklat. It says, Vayashav ba ad motza Kohen HaGadol. How long does a murderer have to stay in the Ir Miklat? Until the Kohen Gadol dies. So here, he's the Kohen Gadol.
Can't ever leave.
So maybe Ema called the Islay Takanta B'chazara Ligli. Whoever has the opportunity to be removed from the Ar Miklat by the death of the Kohen Gadol, fine, he goes into Golus. But the Leslie Takanta B'chazara, but whoever doesn't have that Takana, Lo Ligli, maybe he shouldn't L'chatchila go to the Ari Miklat. And where do we see this? Does not.
But only once he's sent, is he still the Kohen Gadol?
He still has the status of a Kohen Gadol, yes.
Oh, okay.
Now they're going to appoint somebody else in Yerushalayim because you need a Kohen Gadol to work on Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
But he doesn't lose his status of a Kohen Gadol.
Oh, okay.
So, Hahoire Kohen Gadol. Somebody kills a Kohen Gadol, the Shoygig. Now, that murderer who now has to run to an Ir Miklat, well, there's no Kohen Gadol, he killed them, right? O Kohen Gadol, Shohar Agasan Nefesh, or Kohen Gadol who murdered, Eina Yotze Misham Nolam. He has no way to go out because there's no Kohen Gadol anymore. So there's no takana of the Kohen Gadol dying. So I might have thought Ema Lo Likli. So maybe the Kohen Gadol shouldn't l'chatchila go into the Ir Miklat. Kamash Malon, that the Mishnah said he does. So the Gemara says, Ema Chanami, maybe this analysis is correct, and maybe the Kohen Gadol should not go. Omer Kra, Lanu Shama Kol Rotzeach. What? It could have said Lanu Shama Rotzeach. Why did the Torah use the extra word kol? Kol is l'rabois afilu Kohen Gadol b'mashma, to include even the Kohen Gadol. Okay. Then it says oivar laseva loitose. So lo sagi de lo ovar. I mean, I understand he murdered. What do you have to? He's chayiv in an asay and a lotase. Hachi komer. Im over alasei the alotase. Whatever a Kohen Gadol violates, if he violated an asay, if he violated a lotase, kehedya the chol dvarav. He's not treated any differently than a regular Yisrael. So the Gemara says pshita. Tzalkdai tichamina hoyalut nan. Ein donin loas hashevet v'loas novi hasheker. If a whole shevet committed an avera, or there's a false prophet, or v'loas hakohen gadol elapi beizin shel shivim ve'echad. You don't go to a regular court. You go to the Sanhedrin HaGadol with 71 people. V'yomer avada barava, because kol hadover hagadol yaviu elecha. Dvarav shel gadol, meaning the big averas of gdolim, like a kohen gadol. He has to be adjudicated in the Sanhedrin of 71. Ema kol dvar shel gadol. Maybe it refers to everything, even minor averas, not just capital crimes. Kamash Malon that no. For regular averas, he's adjudicated in regular bezdin. For an avera that gives you capital punishment, that has to go to bezdin of 71. Freik the Gemara of Ema Chanami. Maybe a Kohen Gadol's, even their small averas should go to the bezdin of 71. Miksiv divrei gadol, it says hadover hagadol. One of the things of the dover gadol mamish, that means an avera that gets a big punishment, meaning capital punishment. Then the Mishnah said me'idu me'id no so. The Kohen Gadol can serve as a witness, and he can be witnessed against. So the Gemara says me'id. V'hatanya. It says in a pasuk, Lo sire eshor achicha o esayoni dachim v'salam tamehem ashev teshivem lachich. If you see your neighbor's ox that's lost, don't close your eyes. Return the lost object to your friend. Now, it doesn't say don't misalem, it says visalamta, which the Chachamim darshan and says pamim she'ata misalem upamim she'ata misalem. You know, it's not all or nothing. Sometimes you can actually close your eyes and not get involved. Haketza. Kohen v'hu beveis hakvaros. Let's say a Kohen is walking by a cemetery and there's a lost object in the cemetery. The Kohen is not required to violate his negative prohibition of not being metami himself to go and return the lost object. In fact, the Kohen is not allowed to go there. Or Zakein ve'eno lefi kvoda. Let's say there's a goose lost, and this is a great gadol b'Yisrael. It's not in his covet to pick up a goose. Or a person has a very busy job. He's going to lose a lot more money than his friend if he was metapel with this aveda. There are times where you don't have to return the lost object because of the covet of a person. So maybe we would have thought that a Kohen Gadol can get out of the requirement to give testimony because of his covet. So Rav Yosef made the melech. So when it says in our Mishnah that a Kohen Gadol can give testimony, it means to give testimony about something that he saw the king, something that happened to the king. Then the king is a more coveted person than the Kohen Gadol, so he can give testimony for the king. It's not a reduction of his covet. We already stated a king is not judged. Lo made v'lo made no so. We said you can't give testimony against the king. So how can the Kohen Gadol? We answered. We said, the Kohen Gadol is giving testimony against the king. You're not allowed to do so. So we go back to the answer, back to the question: what about the Kohen Gadol? What's the chiddush to tell us that he can be made? Elam Rav Zera, shemade leben melech. If there's a prince, the son of a king, we don't have the same restriction of being not testifying against him, and he's on a higher level regarding covet. Freit the Gemara ben melech hedyatu. As long as he's not a melech, he's a regular person. So there's no special covet of a Kohen Gadol to give testimony on his behalf. Ela made b'fnei hamel. We're talking about the king came to visit Bezdin, and because of Kavod HaMalchus that is there, there's no sort of insult to the Kohen Gadol's covet by testifying. So the Gemara says that's not a good answer. A melech could not sit with Sanhedrin. Mishum yikar Kohen Gadol asav yosef. Because the Kohen Gadol is giving testimony, then we allow the melech to go there. Mekable niyal l'saduse. Koyu va'ozlu minyonule anabedina. We are mekabel the edus of the Kohen Gadol, and the king stands there, and then he leaves, and then the dayanim get to work. So that fulfills both dinim: the fact that the melech doesn't sit with the judges, and the Kohen Gadol can give testimony. So gufa in the language of Chazal always means now we're going to deal with something in detail, that which we mentioned in passing. We mentioned in passing, ein moishivin melech b'Sanhedrin, that we don't seat a melech in Sanhedrin. V'lo melech v'kohen gadol b'Iber Hashana. When the Bezdin is sitting and evaluating whether they should do a leap year or not, the melech and the kohen gadol cannot be there. Now, why can't the melech be b'Sanhedrin? Because lo sane al riv, lo sane al rav. You don't put in the Bezdin somebody who's a great person that the other dayanim will sort of be subservient to his thought. And because we want the Dayanim to be free in their thought. And the Melech is, people are going to be reluctant to say their free thought, free expression when the Melech is there. Melech v'kohen gadol biber shana. Melech mishum apsanya. The Melech is in charge of the economy of Klal Yisrael. He has to provide food for his army. So by adding an extra month, that's adding significant expenses for the king. So he will vote against it, not for the right reason. And the same thing, the Kohen Gadol mishum tzina. The Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur has to go in and go on the floor without shoes. He has to go into the mikveh 5 times. He wants to make sure it's warm on Yom Kippur. And by extending the year, Yom Kippur is going to end up in October instead of September. It's going to be colder. So he has a personal negiah. So we don't allow that. That weather and whether fruits ripen has to do with the seasons. Because we don't want we can see the Kohen Gadol wanted to keep Tishrei as early as possible. More says, Aini. There were 3 cattle watchers in one place. The Rabbanan overheard them. They were talking about certain signs of the weather. If the grain all matures at the same time, Dinu Adar. That happens in the month of Adar. V'imlav less din Adar. And otherwise, it's not Adar. It's still Shvat. It's sort of like Benjamin Franklin or poor Richard's Almanac that used to give the farmers various, if you could see your shadow in February, all of these various atmospheric hints to tell the farmers what to plant and when, etc. Now, v'chad amar im tor b'tzfar b'tlagimos. If the ox is in the morning, he's going to die from snow. It means it's still going to be it's still a cold season. If he can sleep in noontime under the fig tree, dinu adar. So we're already in adar. But v'imlav less than adar, then it's Shvat still. If an east wind blows and your breath that comes out of your mouth is stronger than that, dinu adar. It's already adar, but v'imlav, it's too early, less than adar. And when the Chachamim heard all of this, they figured, this is a very early season. We got to add a month. They added a month. So the Tizbar Rabbanon Arvesech Samach, did you think the Chachamim relied on the musings of these cattle people? They made complex astronomical calculations. The Roy Bakers, the Roy Baker said that, you're going to be matzliach with the decisions you make. Okay, we'll stop here. So, Navi Shir is at 8 o'clock, and tomorrow we'll learn at 8 o'clock, regular time, 8 p.m.
8 p.m.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a wedding tomorrow night, but I'm not going to stay long. Can we do it at 9 o'clock tomorrow night?
I'll put it
You can
up.
try, see if I can be awake.
Let's do it 9 o'clock tomorrow night.
Okay. All right.
I'll be home from the wedding by then, and we can do the daf then.
Okay.
By 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock. I think the wedding starts early, so let's make it at 9.
Okay. So,
Shkoyach, everybody.